It's not well known what the futurist actually does. And in my case, how I started that was that I wanted to understand how society moves from one phase to another. That's always been interesting for me, but also how companies get to the one stage to the next stage. And I was very much attracted to the natural sciences in the beginning. And I saw how these guys were modeling different stuff. And I thought that if they can model what's going on in the nature, why can't we model how the societies work, even if it's very difficult and complicated? So I started for myself. I'm an extremely curious person. So I look
Good.
here and there and everywhere. The necessary kind of background skills that you need to have to take this a bit crazy profession. Basically, building ideas how to reach the future, what type of the tools we have as human beings, as collectives, as companies, as nations. I've been working last 30, 35 years.
Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Shahid Durrani. Today we have with us Markku Wilenius. Is that correct? Wilenius?
That is very much correct. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Shahid. Yes.
no
Wilenius,
problem.
yes.
Markku, no problem. Markku is a top international futurist, Knight of Finland, Chair of UNESCO for Planetary Futures, and former Dean of the Dubai Future Academy. Wow. Welcome to our show, Markku.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh,
I'm
no problem.
I'm really happy to be a part of your show.
Oh, thank you so much. We're grateful to have you as well. Can you tell us more about what this means exactly? Personally, I'm not very much aware, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience as well. So can you explain the future part? I have an idea, but can you, in your own words, explain to us what this is, future?
Yeah. You're not alone. It's not well known what the futurist actually does. And in my case, how I started that was that I wanted to understand how society moves from one phase to another. That's always been interesting for me, but also how companies get to the one stage to the next stage. And I was very much attracted to the natural sciences in the beginning. And I saw how these guys were modeling different stuff. And I thought that if they can model what's going on in the nature, why can't we model how the societies work, even if it's very difficult and complicated? And that's how I started. So for myself, I'm an extremely curious person. So I look
Good.
here and there and everywhere, and that's one of the necessary kind of background skills that you need to have to take this a bit crazy profession. But yeah, basically building ideas how to reach the future, what type of the tools we have as human beings, as collectives, as companies, as nations. That's been basically what I've been working last 30, 35 years.
Beautiful. So basically, would this also involve communities where people will be living in the future?
Absolutely, because there's a bit of a story here behind, and that goes back to the Second World War and its aftermath. There were a lot of villages, a lot of towns all around the Europe that were completely destroyed by the war. And there came one guy, his name is Robert Jung, came and looked at this devastation and thought, what can we do? People are really downtrodden and all of that. They need to be cheered up and see that there is a future even after these devastating events. And so he started to develop this kind of a methodology, kind of a workshop methodology that he could go to the village and say, hey, come on, guys, let's cheer up now and look what you can do with what you have. Let's first look what you actually have, and then let's look at your visions, your ideas. How would you want to go about it? And make that on the kind of in a free way, not thinking about the constraints. We don't have a money. We don't have a this, or we don't have, just think about what is your vision really? And then start to build the steps towards that vision. And that's how it started. The other way how it started was also after the Second World War. There were, in those days, Soviet Union and United States, those are two opposite poles. And the first time there was these weapons of mass destruction. So some of the guys in a Pentagon research center, which is called the RAND, which is in California, started to think about what type of the scenarios we can actually build if somebody's crazy enough to start this nuclear war. And just to show how completely insane it would ever to pull that trigger. And that's where they started to formalize the different kind of methods, how you actually build different future scenarios. Scenario word itself comes from Hollywood, and that stands for manuscript for any type of a movie. So they are actually, scenarios are manuscripts for the future. So that's the kind of origins of the futures thinking in more commercial way, but also more academic way. And that's how then I came to the picture much later and started to build on that the tradition.
Yeah, the one part that you mentioned about what is your vision? Don't worry about the how. Don't worry about all the restrictions and what could come in the way. It's very similar to how we work when we work with students, when we mentor people. We say, go after a big, beautiful goal, but just don't worry about the how right now. The how will come. So that's very cool that you mentioned that.
That is exactly because people often start to worry too soon for that. Of course, at some point you need to
of course
grab that question as well, but should never be the beginning.
Never.
First, just to imagine yourself. What do you really want? What is your
imagination? Imagination is the key. Everything that we enjoy right now that was man-made or woman-made is from the imagination first, right?
And imagination and creativity, at the end of the day, that's what we as humans have.
Yes.
That's what differentiates us from animals and other stuff.
Very good.
That's what we really have. And we need to keep that in mind. Sometimes we narrow ourselves to be like
limit ourselves.
Like robots and limit ourselves and repeating also the old mistakes and don't bother to look at the new ways of doing things. And
it's not good actually when we actually look at other people, what they're doing and try to mimic it, because we do have phenomenal gifts. Every single human being is to use that power of imagination to come up with new exciting ideas. And Dubai is probably a very futuristic based type of a country that is focused on what's new, what's creating, what should we create that stands out in the world. And it's incredible that you were part of that. So can you share your experience in Dubai? Because they're doing some phenomenal things. And also Saudi Arabia is catching up too, right?
Oh, yeah, very much. Yeah, so that was an exciting couple of years. I was in Dubai, particularly in 2020-21, really helping them to build a kind of a very unique program for the government, but also for the businesses, that how would we look at the future at this point of time? There's maybe an end of the oil era, or there is an end of the oil era at some point. And a lot of other things that are coming on the picture. And future cannot be the same as it is now. So it's going to be something very different, how to imagine that. But Dubai is a very special place because you cannot think of any other place that was 40 years ago. It was basically a village in the sand. And now it's this kind of a global metropolis and then a central hub for commerce, for transportation, for tourism and all that. So the work that they have done is something hard to match, really. And one of the things that I learned from there, because it was really a trip for me, was that they really show how impossible becomes possible. That they, time and again, they were able very concretely to show. People were laughing at them when they said that we want to become a tourist hub. What? There's nothing but sand and hot, and who wants to come here and blah, blah, blah. And so many other instances where they all exceeded all the possible expectation. And the secret for that was that they were serious about those things. They were really serious about building something that has never been seen. They believe that it's the belief. It really is belief that can move the mountain. And they, if anybody, can show that's actually how the reality works.
Yeah, it is.
And so that's a great sort of a show of actually how reality works. Also in that way, because we don't usually see these type of things happen. You see a little incremental growth or degeneration, little bit this and that more. But these kind of a dramatic exponential shifts, we don't see that often happen in such a short time scale. So that's really incredible.
No, it is incredible. And really, Markku, if you look at Thomas Edison and some other big names, people are laughing at them, laughing at him. What are you doing? This makes no sense. And the same way with Dubai, if people are laughing at them, but they utilize that power that every single human being has. And that's what we say on the show here, is that you are super. And I mean it, because I feel that every single human being has incredible potential that has been limited by their environment, that they're not bringing out. And I was in that circle before, and I knew that ceiling, and I knew that box I was in. I had no idea there's a box can get so much more bigger, but it all starts with these tools that we're given. One of them is imagination. That's where the creativity comes in. I am very much impressed with what Dubai did as well.
Yeah. And I really think if we think ourselves as human beings, whether we are entrepreneurs or whatever career we take in or mission, I think the point is that we need to use our potential as human beings, and we need to find out what that potential is. And that's not something necessarily we learn from the school, because from the school we learn stuff that has been produced elsewhere, and we need to learn that. So that's a different type of the learning. But learning to what is your true inner potential and how to use that. That's the real. That's real. That's different. And that's the fundamental. That's our fundamental, should be fundamental commitment to ourselves that we need to do. We need to find where is our potential.
It's genuinely, like even our intuition, for example, that we've been gifted. Just look at all the advancements that we did by downloading some of this information by some of these great thought leaders that put forth a lot of technologies that we use today, just with a calm mind, when they weren't thinking about their conditioning and reactive thinking. They were just calming things down and just waiting for something, and they would get this information. The technologies that we have today are amazing. So my next question to you is, what are some insights that you could share about some future technologies that we haven't heard of yet? And how would they impact us?
Yeah, of course. That's a very exciting question.
If you have that information.
Some thoughts on that. I warn you, nobody knows the future. Not even me.
But who knows? Somebody's working on something. Maybe you're aware of it.
Yeah, that's what we have are the human intentions. And of course, when it comes to the technology, I think the big promise in technology in general, before I go more into more specific, is that it allows us to be much more resourceful. And for society, it means that we need to be much more resource efficient. The problems that we have today, climate change, environmental degradation, all that, has much to do with that we are not using very intelligently the resources that we have, material and financial, whatever resources. But then on the top of that comes back to what we talked about earlier, the human resources and what can we do to enhance ourselves as human beings. And I think that very much comes down to those type of the technologies that can enable us to focus where we are best at. Because we need to be building sort of our strength. At any given moment, we need to be building our strength. And if there are technologies that are enabling us to do that and to focus on that and to enhance the kind of a productivity from that perspective, then we can see easily that, or not only we get more things going, also we as human beings are becoming actually much wiser. And those technologies where we can actually understand more in ways of the systems than just the kind of individual pieces of information. And you referred earlier to intuition. Intuition is great because it actually, what it does to us, it connects different pieces of information together.
Or pointers.
So
it's good at giving pointers, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the question is that, can we enhance that somehow? And I don't mean taking drugs or anything. I'm not that kind of a guy. But that we get the type of the information that really enable us to get to the heart, to the core of the things, to really understand how the world works. And now that we have the sources of information coming from different sources outside, we first, of course, we need to be critical about it, but at the same time, we need to have new ways how we actually build on what we already know. And things like a chat GPT, it was showing the first signs of that. It's not still very clever, but it's okay. It does an incredible thing. And I'm already fearing what my students are doing there when they're doing the exams. But jokes aside, I think when we get to the next levels of technologies that can really help us to deep dive the information that we already have, that would fast track us into much more intelligent decisions about what should we do next and how should we do this and that. So to use the existing data in a much more intelligent way, that's where the big thrust of technology comes. The other, obviously, is what I was referring earlier about the resource efficiency. So particularly when it comes to the energy use, we are in this terrible trouble because we are so stupid to use these very old sources of energy that we all know that are destroying the planet. So what to do about it? Let's use the existing technologies that we already have, improve them, and put them in place of these old energy technologies to save ourselves and our children's future and grandchildren's and so forth. And that we can do, but we are too slow there. It's the slowness that is really not helping here when we need to be moving fast forward into the future. So all these technologies can do that, but we need to be using them much more efficiently.
I sometimes think that if Nikola Tesla was able to live a little bit longer, I think he would have changed some big things.
Oh boy, Nikola was a very interesting guy. He already knew how to use this cosmic energy to generate his
0 point energy.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes when you bring those new technologies and there are not people that whose awareness is sufficient.
The awareness has to be sufficient enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
Yeah.
And often we have the situation where we have the information, we have the data, but we don't have awareness.
Yeah.
And if you don't have awareness, whatever data you have around you, you cannot use that. And that's the problem that we often have.
Yeah. If you look at 100 years ago, the human awareness was at a different level. And now if you look at our awareness, because of our experiences, it has increased to a much higher level. But if we start utilizing that higher level of awareness, even if we don't go based on the experiences and we start playing around in that area of higher awareness, you start figuring things out and things start making more sense. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely on track there. And I think what's ultimately preventing us from moving to the next phase, so to say, is that we're still too much self-centered as human beings.
Yes.
And because you can experiment with this. The moment you're doing something good for the others and not for yourself, the moment you start to feel better.
Yeah.
That's always the case.
Yes.
And this is how we have been built. But again, because of the education and because of the kind of, I would say, a bit cultural tendencies that we still currently have, this very materialistic world, we tend to think ourselves, our own self-interest. And you see guys that put in, who are just thinking about themselves and I don't care about the rest.
Yeah.
If I stay in power, that's good enough.
Yeah.
And that's the problem of our world. And that requires awareness.
Yes.
And when we get to that level of awareness, that when we're doing something good for the others, that is what we need to be doing. And that is also benefiting ourselves at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it's a very different culture that we need to be doing. And I'm not saying that it's not existing. It does exist, but it's still a minority in the margin. A lot of people say when they ask me individual, probably most of the people say that, yes, I want to do something good.
Yeah.
But then there are these tracks that
Yeah.
lead us astray, so to say.
Yeah.
And that's
I think, Marco, that COVID, because of what we experienced with COVID, I believe more and more people are paying attention to their consciousness, their awareness. There's more and more people that are working on increasing their level of awareness, which is great news. There is a transition happening, a global focus on this right now. For me, I was always taking action based on me. I was like thinking, my results, my thing, what am I doing? What am I building? But I felt consciously that I care for everybody. I was consciously feeling that, thinking that I care for everyone, but my actions weren't representing that thought pattern. So because my subconscious wasn't programmed to do that, right? So when I worked on myself and paid attention instead of out here, I just paid attention inside, started working on that. That was the biggest clarity I received. Just spread love and do more for others subconsciously, habitually, have it in you. And when you do that, all the goodness just comes to you anyways. This is the primary focus of the show, is just we're just adding value continuously. And even when I meet with prospects, not the focus of making a sale or something, it's just focus to see if we can help. It's just a giving mentality. The giving mentality brings so much back to people, I feel.
Yeah, Shahid, I think you're absolutely right. And particularly, I see a lot of hope when I look at the younger generation, people, the age of my own kids and so forth. I really see that there is so much more awareness of these things, first of all, and understanding that this is really much more important rather than just focus how much I can grab in this and that stuff. But really, how can I contribute? And there is definitely, as you said, there is definitely awareness which is rising, and that's exciting. But we really need that too. We don't have too much time, so that really needs to happen. And some of our older generations are understanding that as well to some extent. So
good.
So
Good move.
I always say that I'm not a hopeless, even if I talk about rough things that are happening in the world. I
optimistic.
A lot of hope.
Yeah,
I'm optimistic.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So based on your research, right, for the future of cities, what are your thoughts about building a more human focused, like a healthy, interconnected, the oneness, the futuristic cities? What could people or developers should be thinking about to bring that focus more into the future?
Great question.
Thank you.
And I've seen this transformation in a way happening, and basically you can say it this way: there has been now, particularly last 70, 80 years of urban development, which is basically being based on commercial and economic interests. Everything that we see in terms of the infrastructure and the way the cities have been built, I don't say exclusively, but I say primarily, has been built on those interests. And now we finally come to realize that a lot of those urban environments that we have built are not very giving you much of the good kicks, and you're not feeling very happy of walking there or experiencing that. Maybe if you are inside your car, it's okay. You have your stereos and blah, blah, blah. But city as an experience has been left aside, and now it's coming back in a big way. And the second idea is that has to happen because more and more people, as we all know, are living in the city. And not all of them are able to hop into some green pastures and forest. And here you can do it in Helsinki very easy. I'm 20 minutes and I'm in a jungle, basically Finnish jungle. But this idea that you need to bring the green and the human scale into the city, that is coming very forceful. And that transformation you see everywhere, from New York to Los Angeles, to Helsinki, to Sydney, to Bangalore, Buenos Aires. So everywhere you see that same thing happening, slowly and different pace, but definitely the same thing is happening.
Very good.
Finally understand that cities are not made for commercial purpose. They're made for people primarily.
Human-centric.
And we need to keep that.
Yes.
Human-centric.
Yes.
And that's what we need to be keeping our mind.
Good.
What is the aesthetic? What is the functionality? How easy you can move there, not only with a car, public transport and light vehicles and pedestrians and all that. And that is the whole new movement. And what is your experience around it when you look at around? Is that pleasing or is that something terrible? And because also if it's not pleasing, then it often creates fears, and that has also its own implications. So we just need to be more conscious. We were talking about awareness. We need to be more aware of for whom we are actually building those cities.
Very good.
And work from there.
That's excellent, Markku. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today and getting to know you and getting to know what you're doing in the world. And I hope you have a long life and you keep creating these innovations and coming up with new ideas for people to implement. And the work that you do is going to be evergreen, right? It's going to be around for a very long time. Appreciate your work. Appreciate your time. Also, thank you so much for agreeing to help us promote your episode on your network, because really it helps us both make a bigger impact when we join forces, help, right? So appreciate that. Thank you so much, Markku. And
thank you. Thank you, Shahid. I really appreciate being here and been talking to you. And I love your episodes. I think you are doing really important work. Keep on doing your very good work.
Thank you so much, Markku. I appreciate that so much. And welcome to our audience as well. I appreciate you. And audience, thank you so much once again for joining us for another episode. Markku's information will be in the show notes. Take a look at what he's doing. His LinkedIn is filled with information as well. Get in touch with him if you need to. This level of awareness that we need to increase, it has to start from individual. It has to start in the mirror. And then once we fill our own glass, we're able to help others. Definitely put some effort into this as well. Thank you for helping us grow. Without you, we could not do it. So appreciate you guys very much. And Markku, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shai.